Hello and welcome everybody to the TESOL International Conference and to this featured session entitled Global Citizenship and the Capacity Building for Peace, which I think is a very needed and interesting topic during these turbulent times. So it gives me great pleasure to hand over the session to our invited speaker, Francis Daehoon Lee. Mr. Lee.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Francis Daehoon Lee. Please call me Francis or Daehoon. Oh, I see a happy face. Kevin, how are you? I haven't seen you for a long time. It's good to see you, everyone. And also Sherry, thank you for joining us. Yes, my topic is Global Citizenship Education. I will shorten it as GCED, Global Citizenship Education. And I want to focus that from the perspective of capacity building for peace. Sometimes we call it peace building capacities. So I will start with my PowerPoint file. Let me know if you cannot see it clearly. Do you see it now?
Yes, it is very clear. Thank you.
Okay. So that's my topic there. What I do, I live in Seoul. I have been teaching in a small university in Seoul called the Seonggwanghae University. My subject area was peace studies and international relations. And then outside the university, I've been engaging in teachers training, especially for GCED and peace education, so that teachers can conduct this sort of training in school. I've been working with UNESCO agencies, which specializes in teachers training. That's where I met Kevin. Actually, he's another specialist in GCD. There is a UNESCO agency based in South Korea called Asia Pacific Center for Education on International Understanding. It's basically GCED teachers training special agency of UNESCO. So what I'm going to share today is my experiences and my thoughts on GCED from the perspective of capacity building for peace, working with UNESCO, working with the school, and working with regional education offices, mostly in teacher training sessions. But I also actually do go to schools, work with very young, like primary students to middle and high school students to train them for peace building capacities. So this is my background. And because we don't have very much time, I will try to just highlight the key points. GCED is a particular term to designate the citizenship education that UNESCO wants to promote since around 2010. And in South Korea, this has been actively incorporated into schools through government policies from 2015. But before that, UNESCO has been advocating this area of education for decades, since 1970s. So I will use UNESCO definition of GCED, the most shortest definition. You can find in this book called Global Citizenship Education, very pretty covered book published by UNESCO a few years back. First, it's a transformative education program. It's not knowledge-based, information-based, or ethics-based, or value-based education. It's different from that. Transformative in the sense that learners take more for the respect for human rights, social justice, diversity, gender equality, and environmental sustainability. But the process is also very important. The whole learning process should be a process of empowering learners to be responsible global citizens. The end point of this education, the goal of this education is to create more inclusive, just and peaceful world. So using this definition, I think we can get the basic sense that this is more training than a book-based learning. This is more like a holistic, transformative, process-oriented education than how to say subject-based education. And one of the key goals of this education is to create a future, a near future, which is inclusive, justice, and peaceful. And coming from peace studies background, and also because we are sitting in the year 2022, and we are witnessing what is happening in Ukraine and in Europe, and we are also witnessing the most rapid increase of arms race in this region, Northeast Asia. So all the most powerful and wasteful militarized countries are concentrated in this region. This is where we do global citizenship training. And someday, if you refer to the most recent reports from the UN and World Bank on the status of conflict and division of the world, there was an excellent report from World Bank and UN together in 2018. I recommend this report very, very highly. The title of the report is Pathways for Peace, Pathways for Peace. And basically the report says, even though we educators and other sectors, people in other sectors, we try to create a very positive future for young people, inclusive, justice, and peaceful, the world in 21st century is very gloomy. The world is being divided very fast. The gap between rich and poor is increasing ever, the most unethically in human history. The wealth is concentrated, and along with the concentration of the wealth, there's a concentration of military production and military power. And the division between nation states are increasing ever. The gap between rich countries and poor countries are not shortening, are not narrowing down. And the disenchantment of youth in general over the world, the distress of young generations, that includes the school students. Stress is ever highest in human history. Every society, rich and poor, is being divided mainly because the society is not able to provide good jobs and good future for the growing young generations. This is a global symptom. So I want to highlight this, that we are living in a very particularly gloomy period of global epoch. That's where GCED is being situated. And that's why the peace building capacities is one of the crucial points of citizenship education. If by any chance, if you're not familiar with citizenship education, I think the best way of summarizing this citizenship education, first, it's not ethics, it's not morals, it's not values. It's how to live peacefully and happily with all different other groups that exist in the world. How to survive and live peacefully with other people. That's basically it. So this cannot be value education. This cannot be ethics education. Lots of skills are involved. Lots of critical review of the reality and the current situation is involved. Lots of new vocabularies that depict the most recent current situation are involved in this education. Well, because my time is very short, I recommend this book published by UNESCO, Global Citizen Education. It's very succinct and it summarizes topics and learning objectives very well. And if you see one of the front pages, they describe this. Okay, if you're a teacher and if you are interested in, if you are worried about dividing world, and if you are interested in making your students to live peacefully with each other, then pay attention to cognitive transformation, social emotional transformation, and behavioral transformation at the same time. At the same time. They cannot be divided. Cognitive can never be separated from social and emotional transformation of the learner. And if there is no behavioral change or training for behavioral changes, then cognitive part is not sufficient. So this multidimensional approach is much emphasized in GCD. And if I summarize, this is my favorite summary, then in terms of knowledge and understanding, we need to enhance the social justice and equality, diversity, globalization, interdependence, sustainability, and peace and conflict. We need much more training and learning in these topic areas. But at the same time, the students are encouraged to acquire more critical thinking, creative thinking, ability to argue effectively and non-conflictually, and ability to challenge injustice and respect for diverse people and things, and ability to cooperate and to resolve conflicts, etc. And from these two pillars, the values and attitudes will spring out, it is assumed. So I'd like to highlight, because conducting GCED in the Korean context, sometimes in English, in UNESCO settings, and sometimes in Korean, I find that there are several key misunderstandings which come from particular cultural and social background of the teachers. GCED is about everyday connectedness of oneself to many other things and many other people, to the conditions. And it's about asking questions. It's not about teachers giving handy answers. It's preparing students to raise good questions and to be more inquiry to uncertain futures. So therefore, it's about developing critical thinkings and becoming active citizens, responsible and engaging in the reality. So it's not a topic which should be dealt as, very large, big, it's about global reality kind of thing. It's not a difficult topic. It shouldn't be approached as a topic or especially difficult topic. It's not about other countries or other cultures or other nations. It's about us, actually. GCED is about me and my friend, my families, and my community members in the context of challenging global realities. It's not about telling people, ability to tell people what you know. It's about ability to engage with other people that you may not understand or feel safe fully. And it's not an extra subject for mathematics teachers or science teachers or history teachers. It is something we dearly need to survive in 21st century. So therefore, something to be infused in the so-called zero curriculum of every subject. I'm sure most of the teachers are familiar with null curriculum or zero curriculum. Okay. Below curriculum, there is an hidden curriculum in which the student goes through more fundamental formation as a human being. It's an interaction with the teachers and other students. It's how good dialogues you have, what kind of engagement you have in daily life with other students. In education, we call it zero curriculum or null curriculum, base curriculum. So that's what I mean. It's not an extra subject. It's a guiding principles and learning that should infuse, that should permeate through every subject, including English as a subject. For example, this is one of the many millions of examples. I'm very fond of using this book. The title is War and Peace. The topic sounds very huge and global. But we can use this kind of simple storybook for very young age children or very senior people at the same time. It depends on how you create a learning process out of a simple issue of conflict. For example, there are conflicts in everyday life. There are big conflicts and small conflicts. And I believe people in peace studies believe that big and small conflicts are intrinsically linked. Everyday division is linked with the division of the world, and division of the world is linked with everyday division, for example. So we use daily experience of conflict. We usually feel that we don't need to quarrel, and usually adults advocate, don't fight, don't quarrel, don't go into argument with your friends and so forth. But there are always fights, small and big fights. Why? So you can invite anyone to think about why. And if you gather students' responses from this picture, then usually you will get this kind of responses. We want something that we don't have. We disagree on many things. I don't like him. I don't trust him because of that. Or sometimes I go to school in a bad mood. In English, we don't have this expression in Korean, but in English, we just get out of bed on the wrong side. Okay? It happens to be that day that we go into the quarrel. And then we end up in finger pointing. He hit me first. He used that word first. He was angry at first. It's his fault. So finger pointing. So what I'm trying to suggest, what this book tries to suggest is that we can think of many possible causes of daily conflict, but usually our emotions, social emotions, end up in the behavior of finger pointing to the other. Okay. I think this is a very, very important finding because that's exactly what you see in the Ukraine-Russian conflict as well. That's what we saw in the Korean War in 1950s. That's what we see in the right-wing accusation of feminists in South Korea during the presidential election, finger pointing. There is a problem, there is a clash of interest, then we end up, without thinking, without analyzing, we end up finger pointing. It's you are the problem. And we want to overcome that. We want to transform this state of emotions and this state of quick judgment and this state of conflictual relationship with the other. So using this book, you may pose the next level of questions. For example, this family was usually very happy family. They usually come up with a consensus after a good dialogue. But this time, on a very particular day, they find it impossible to come to an agreement where to go for family vacation this summer. The opinions are so different. The favorite places are so different. And then you can, raise this situation. This is a very symbolic situation, actually, to the students and ask, can you find more than 7 possible causes of the disagreement? Even though the family as a culture, generally, they agree very well. But on this particular case, they failed. So what are the possible 7 causes for the failure to reach a consensus? Then if you arouse the inquiry sentiment of the students well enough, then usually most of the students, whether young and old, they usually succeed in finding 7 possible causes. They are talking, but they are not listening. They are insisting on the original claim of their own. Some people are sitting and some people standing. They are not equal in the talk. One person is even excluded from the talk. It's not everybody talking together. Only some people are talking, and only some people are talking comfortably. Their face is rigid. They're stiff. They are talking too serious. Some is even, what do you call it? What do you call this liquid from your skin in English? Sweating. Yeah, they're so serious and in arguing, they are sweating. That shows something about their emotions. I think one person is even angry. Some people remember the similar debates in their own family. And I found many students saying that that person is saying the same thing over and over again for hours. Okay? That person is just accusing me. He's not focusing on the topic. He's not interested in the vacation. He's just interested in accusing. Okay? These are all excellent responses. And you can see that through these questions and lively exchange of responses, they are linking with their experiences. They are linking to what they already know about different conflicts. Now, the job of the teacher, job of the facilitator of this learning is to make more connections of their responses to the real world, because lots of these things happen in the real world. Now, you can use many different types of conflict. This is a soft conflict, as you can see. And as you can see, this represents symbolically a more tough conflict. So if you're a good teacher, a training teacher to arouse the students, you may ask this question. Okay, this is a different conflict. And as you can see, this is more harsh. Okay? They are more unhappy than the previous family. Men on this side, they would like to watch the World Cup football game, soccer game. And the women on the right side, they want to see the last episode of the Korean soap opera. Okay, this is analog TV. You can only see one channel. So now give me 7 possible reasons why this conflict is more tough than this one. What makes this conflict more yelling and more hating and more sharp and more, clash? Okay. Then, actually students are more enthusiastic about responding to this conflict. They are really mad, they are yelling, they are shouting. They are not just sweating, but the liquid is coming out of their mouth. They are throwing liquids at each other. And they are about to use their physical actions. Look at their chairs and sofa. The men are so dominating the family. They have been dominating. That's why the women are already angry from the past and so forth. As you can see, if you are a trained peace education trainer, you can interpret this. If the parties are divided into 2 different identity groups, the conflict becomes sharper. If they are holding newspapers which are published from different sources, if their information sources are drastically different, the argument will not narrow down easily. If their interest is very immediate to be fulfilled, this conflict is difficult to resolve. Okay. Look at Russia and Ukraine. Okay. Out of poverty, Ukraine wants to join rich Western countries to boost the economy in a very quick time. Russia, when Ukraine government decided to install American missile units in Ukraine soil, it was immediate Russian security interest to take actions. Okay? If the dire interest comes immediately, then each party is more ready to take actions. And if the barrier of decent language breaks down, if the language go beyond the critical point, denial of the other existence, the whole denial of the dignity of the existence of the other party. For example, there was almost a war in 2017 in Korea. Probably you didn't know. The American bombers went into North Korean sphere and came back and the military alertness of North Korea and South Korea was on the highest in decades. We almost went into war. Everything is in secret in this country, so we didn't know. Later we knew. And if you remember 2017, in Korea, sitting in Korea, both governments, North and South, were exchanging the harshest words against the leader of the other side. They were denouncing, total denouncement of the leadership of the other side was happening in 2017. And if you are trained in conflict analysis, then, okay, I want to get out of this country. Okay. So the critical level of dialogue, there is a critical level of dialogue breakdown. So these factors combined, we go to a breakdown, the actual physical clash. I will jump. So what I'm trying to say, our students, they face small and serious individual and social conflicts every day. And on global scale, the level and gravity of these conflicts are increasing. And that's a fact. If you're sitting in an international organization, that's a fact. So what we try to have students to touch is that we want them to think about causes of conflict more. We want to make them to think about the power of dialogue and negotiations, the opportunities that these things open. And we need them to think about the effect of closed identity and flexible identity. Whenever I see Ukraine, I feel very sad because Ukraine was already divided between strong Ukraine identity sectors in the West and strong Russian identity sectors in the East, and buffer zones in the middle. And the last election, which elected Zelensky, it vaporized the buffer zones. It announced that Ukraine only for Ukrainians. So it was very difficult for Russian identity Ukrainians to exist in that situation. That's what I mean. In conflict, to try to address a conflict, we need to prepare to be more flexible about the identities. Living in Korea, I feel this is very, very sensitive. If North Korean identity as a socialist, communist, and anti-America and so forth, it's only that identity, and South Korean identity is anti-communist, anti-North Korea, and nothing else, there's no way that two Koreans can talk to each other. So a new identity, like we are all Koreans, we want to have a joint prosperity and working together. We want to visit our parents and ancestors together. That's new identity being infused in the Korea conflict case. It's the same thing on individual cases. I hate that guy that much and he hates me that much. But listen, okay, so you clashed over some food or conflict or money, that's fine. But do you want to stay in this class for the rest of the year and together with your friends? Do you want to have a nice class until December this year or not? Okay. If you approach it that way, then you are emphasizing a larger identity of the larger community where the conflicting students belong to. So this is a very traditional and typical approach. The language, the importance of language, we want students to think about that. Okay? Every conflict, it starts from the dispute in languages. So language skills, especially language skills for reducing conflict tension and encouraging peace-building energy is very, very important. And now in 21st century, we are living in a finger-pointing era. So we want students to know how to reduce the temptation and desire, the need to finger point the source of the problem to the other person. By definition, conflict is always mutual. It's an interactive, long span process. Conflict is not a single event. Conflict doesn't come from that guy. So that's kind of mindset change we want to promote. And as we saw this case, this is a symbolic of many, many similar conflicts in the world. We saw this case, memory of the past is quite influential. Okay? So we need to we need to learn how to deal with memory of the past. Otherwise, the past conflict will regenerate into the new ones. And also in peace studies, we say every violence, almost all violence, has a gender dimension. Every war is a violence against women. Put together, we can say that violent conflicts involving violence, has always been gendered. And our education until today, recently today, we have ignored this very important gender influence into violent conflicts. So that's what we try to do. Okay? We try to create a good citizenship among young generations. For that, they need to learn more than other things, how to cope with conflicts, and especially conflicts that develop into violent conflicts. And to do that, all these topics are very, very crucial. And the existing schools have not dealt with that sufficiently. So UNESCO took the initiative in the 1970s. Really, really, we need to change education so that students are trained in this field. Within 50 minutes, I'd like to present some examples how that this process of transformation can be fun and interactive, and the teachers do not have to give long lectures or use big books. Okay. So my group, my peace education group is called Peace Momo. It's based on philosophy that every learner can learn from other learners the best, more than learning from the teacher. It's everyone learning from everyone else. Okay, that's what it means, Peace Momo. So we can sit like in a circle like this, different ages. As you know, some of you know that in South Korea, age is a big source of power. Age means everything in social life. I feel very, very bad about that. This is feudal, dynastic, anachronistic, ancient thing which survives in 21st century. And that shows how unequal, how hierarchy and how uneducational South Korea is until today. So the age sensitivity is very, very, very high in every Korean settings. So from the beginning, we need to break down. So here, sitting in a circle, everyone is equal. Nobody calls other people big brother or big sister or hey, you guy. We don't. So they use horizontal Korean language to promote equality in relationship. And in the middle, there is a card, about 100 cards, which has a different word for different emotions. For example, I'm tired, interesting, excited, flying, want to sleep, want to lie down, bored, stimulated, questioning. This kind of social emotional keywords are written on the card. So when they gather together for peace building session, the first thing they do is that without introducing oneself, they pick up 1 or 2 cards. And then they sit in a pair of 2. And they tell each other in equal horizontal language, okay, that's very un-Koreanish Korean, equal horizontal language, calling each other like friend, why they chose the 2 cards and how the 2 cards describe the status and situation that each person is at the time. What is it? We start with not knowledge, not value, not with goals. We start with social emotions. Every human community creates a social emotion. And in South Korea, age difference hierarchy creates a very sharp social emotions, which inhibits equal democratic citizens' relationship to each other. So we break down that existing hierarchical social emotions and translate that into friendly horizontal exchanges. This is basically fun. I think this is a human default. I believe that human beings become happy, satisfied, and dignified when they are equally respected and interacted with other human beings. We need others to prove oneself. So there are two things. It's a different relationship making, and there's lots of dialogue happening at the beginning. Then after that, you can soon introduce some artistic approach. For example, drawing each other's person in a very large sheet of paper, colorfully, but very, how to say, abstract, in an abstract way, like Picasso. So there's a body line, and each person in pair of two, they tell their life stories to each other, and the person who listened to the life story of their partner express that in colors and lines and decorations, in whatever abstract way, no factual way. But as everybody knows, that abstract artistic representation are much better, far much better storytelling than logical, rational language. You know that. And in order to deepen our relationship, whether you fall in love with each other or you want to make trusting relationship in the job place, our language immediately transcends from rational logistic mode into cultural symbolic mode. So that's what they do, okay? Without nobody telling them, just by using simple artistic representation, they demonstrate themselves that they are able to use symbolic and cultural and abstract language to communicate with each other. And their sensation, emotion is that they feel much deeper in this dialogue. One piece of drawing, storytelling, 10 minutes live storytelling each other, 20 minutes drawing, 10 minutes and 30 minutes. And after that, they talk more. So 50 minutes is gone, take a break, come back, place all the artistic drawings at the center of the circle. And the teacher declares that we have become a community of Picassos. And then they ask each other about the drawings, and another 50 minutes of life stories in a friendly, horizontal way. Friends and colleagues, this quality of conversation did not happen in schools. Because our schools, I think there are some similarities in many other societies. Our schools are basically competitive to enter good university and to get good income and to be top of the other people. And this doesn't matter. So creating new experience like this, starting with a 2x2 conversation, changing your partners, and then after the whole day, you express how you felt in the day's expression. And the next day when you come, you again become artist. You are invited to the Museum of Louvre in Paris. And then everybody is a performance artist. So you are given 7 chairs and you are given the task, okay? Impromptu exhibition, arts exhibition. With 7 chairs, please make an artifact that describe in your own philosophy what power stands for. Power, the concept is power. Why power? Because I show you the conflicts in the 2 families. Okay? The power imbalance is always in the background of conflictual situation. Unequal distribution of power is closely linked with escalation of conflict. So the next day, students are invited to not discuss about power first, but to express power in an abstract way. Why abstract way? Because the feelings come first, and feelings are quicker to link their mind to their experience. Every student, whether they're 6 years old or 10 years old, they experienced injustice of unequal power relationship in their life for several hundreds of times. That's what society is to them. Especially if you are young people in South Korea, you have been treated very unjustly, inhumanely, just because of the age in the society, hundreds of times. So we are dealing with inequality, and you don't have to ask them to speak out. They speak out with chairs first, and then the teacher becomes a reporter and ask each artist, young artist, you report them, okay? So what were you in your mind when you were creating this beautiful Picasso-like chair arts? What did you want to describe? This is my bossy Taekwondo teacher in my Taekwondo school. He's always like that, and we Taekwondo students, we are like slaves in that. I heard these stories in this kind of, and then you learn that, you know, it's almost first time that these students are telling the stories of oppression in daily life, in the society, and how they felt, and how their classmates are all equal, being constantly oppressed by adults because of the power relationship called age hierarchy. So these are some of the examples, and students have fun, teachers have more fun than just simple teaching. So the conceptual diagram of this transformation, I can present it like this, okay? Let students do something, because capacity is doing something. It's about doing something. Capacity means it's different from value and information, knowledge education. Capacity training means that the learners become more ready to do something in their life. That's what capacity training means. So citizenship education should be capacity building process, and capacity means, you know, being able to do something or being trained to be able to do something in their life, actual life. So instead of talking, instead of giving something, let them do something together. A kind of representation of reality in the classroom, or cultural artistic simulation of the reality in the classroom. Okay. So when they do something together as a simulation of the reality, they are much, much better in communicating each other, because it's their life. It's not teachers' life that they have to learn. It's not teachers' knowledge that they have to learn. It's not teachers' lifestyle that they have to learn. They're learning from their own life experiences. So they become excellent horizontal communicating persons. One of the first requisites of good citizens. Okay? You talk to each other before shooting each other, right? We need that, right? You talk to each other before killing each other. We need that very, very much in today's world. So communication happens naturally and lively. And do you know, when communication is combined with arts or emotion, okay, then all different parts of our brain are they spark up. Okay? If you use logic, only one part of the brain sparks up. But if you are doing storytelling with your emotions and your experience, hundreds of parts of brain spark up together. We elevate in our inherent abilities as human beings.
Sorry to interrupt you, Francis. Just to let you know, we've got 5 minutes left.
Yeah. Okay. So in that sense, we develop sensitivity of the self and the other. And I think this contributes with voluntary self-initiated transformation process in the learning. Okay, I will stop here. I'm very sorry that I took too long, only 5 minutes for exchanges.
That's not a problem. That was all very interesting. I think you've got everybody's attention. Let's open up the floor for some questions or comments. Are there any questions? Francois, can you just put the stop the screen sharing?
Okay, I will.
We can see the gallery. Right, thank you.
Yes.
So are there any questions or comments?
Professor Kevin, may I ask you?
Yeah.
We did it together in the workshop before, so.
Yeah.
What is your impression?
I have some comments, actually.
Right. Please do.
So as I'm listening to you speak about GCE, what really strikes me is how you present it as being transformative, as opposed to being focused on subject teaching or testing, not ethics-based, not values-based, et cetera. So I thought that was really a bit unique from your perspective and really useful. And then the other thing that stuck out to me is the prefigurative aspect of it, that the education is toward justice, equitable and peaceful societies, that what happens in the classroom is a microcosm for what is taking place in society at large. And so I thought the transformative element of the GCE that you're presenting and the prefigurative aspect of it were both very, very important. And two other things stuck out as well. The disarmament orientation. So a lot of the peace education that you're speaking about here is specifically addressing war, armaments, thinking about ways that we can disarm society, disarm students, their minds, as well as the arms of the state. And so I think that's really critical, because we've also heard from other peace education scholars throughout the day, and we take very different approaches to peace education. And so often the idea of disarmament isn't in the discourse, it isn't in the teaching, and particularly because of the time that we live in with Ukraine and Russia and other conflicts taking place. This is really critical, I think, in peace education. And then along with that, the critical Freirean approach that you're taking, that's really looking at analyzing power, trying to address unjust social structures. So these are some things that really struck me. And I guess I have a question around it, Francis, is how do we as teachers balance that those approaches between being micro-focused and focused on students' attitudes and students' behaviors, and being a better me or a better you, the sort of positive psychology approach to peace, and then blend it with a much more critical orientation toward eradicating racism, eradicating sexism, eradicating militarism in the world, questioning capitalism. And so I think that's a really difficult antinomy between positive personal behaviors and critical social change. And so I guess my question for you is how you navigate between these different spaces.
Well, Kevin, first of all, thank you very much for excellent synthesis, which was much better than my presentation, actually. So thank you very much. And for your question, I have to be very short. I got only 1 minute. In a very divisive world, and in the middle of the modern education, which is basically compartmental, I think teachers have to transcend their teachers training, compartmental teachers training, okay? And citizen education demands a very holistic and connective, integrated approach for human transformation.
Mm.
Knowledge, information, emotion, relationship, interaction, critical and additive. These have to be connected and integrated. I think unless teachers change and transform into more holistic teaching profession, this compartmentalized education system will not be able to succeed in good citizenship education.
Francis, I think we can allow for one more quick question.
Yes, gladly, yes.
So I think there was a question about workshop that has already been posted in the chat. Francis will have a workshop tomorrow, so don't miss that if you want to learn more about this. Are there any other comments, questions? Personal anecdotes, stories?
I want to recommend that Cheryl is also one of the best trainer in peace building.
Too much. I really appreciate the way that you pulled together the bigger picture and the concrete too. I talked about the fractal model of that patterns of conflict are repeated in different levels of society and of our experiences. So the skills are there. And I think that the language, from a language perspective, that the language skills are there as well. And we need to practice the language, and our learners are there for language learning. But in order to learn language well, we need to work on the interpersonal level. That's but right. We can talk about the other levels and help them to make those connections. I like what you said. This is not about other places, it's about our connection to that. So I think that's really important, and the language helps to make that connection between the macro and the micro.
Yes, also my personal hope is that in foreign language learning, education, this social, emotional, and relational part that the language creates, I think they should be very, very emphasized. Okay, I guess, yeah.
If that's all, the Discord link has been shared in the chat, and it is on the Edzilla page. So please feel free to pop over there and ask any more questions, and do please engage further on this topic. Thank you very much, Francois, for that very thought-provoking presentation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Francis, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
Yeah, see you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
And also, thank you, Garth, for moderating. Thank you very much.